Hi, everyone. Hopefully, I think you can hear me now. Yes, I'm Clare Callison. I'm the Maddie's Canine Life-Saving Advisor for American Pets Alive. I teach 3 of our dog-focused apprenticeships, and just a plug, if you guys are interested, the window for Maddie's Fun opens on Monday, so definitely get in there. All right, so starting out, before I was at American Pets Alive, I worked in San Antonio. My very first job was in the shelter, was an adoption counselor at the City of San Antonio Animal Care Services. Like many of you, I started as a foster. I really just didn't know the reality of what the shelter was. When I got the job, I soon was promoted to foster coordinator. I got a flip phone with like 2 contacts in it, and that was the foster program. So you guys can all kind of relate to that. Very familiar. At the time, the live release rate was hovering in the 25%, 28%, but with a 31,000 intake. So you can imagine that was pretty devastating for 20,000 animals being put to sleep every day. I took it upon myself, and thankfully I have one of my old bosses here that just really let me run the foster program as I thought was needed. So the job as it was written was sit behind a computer and answer emails, but with a flip phone of 2 contacts, there were no emails coming in. We had a weird setup where there was a satellite facility, and it had extra kennels. It was about 20 minutes from the main shelter. It was tucked in this strange remote military base, and it held about 100 dogs. And it was a blessing and a curse because it allowed extra capacity for us, but the community hated it because they were just not seen. And so what I quickly realized is that after the 3-day stray hold, if they didn't have a microchip, the animal control trucks would come, pick up the dogs from this remote satellite facility, and then literally just go through the back door, and then they were just euthanized systematically, just sort of assembly line fashion. I ditched my desk thanks to my old boss, went back there as hard as it was, and spent most of my day just taking photos of them. I just had Craigslist and my personal Facebook page. I didn't really know what I was doing, so just taking photos of them, and it was all about volume, all about numbers. I think we get caught up in that a lot, is just the volume, and we forget the individual faces. But Lady was one dog that really I just remember, I print her picture and I kind of reflect back on her when I have a hard day. She came in, you can see she's a little San Antonio special there. There was nothing wrong with her, super healthy. She was one of those tucked tail, but was super gentle, would just jump in your lap and cuddly. She was stinky. That was the only thing that was wrong with her. I gave her a bath. I put a 24-hour hold on her. It expired. Put another 24-hour hold for my friend that was coming to visit her. Whoops, sorry, chameleon. That expired, and then I came back the next day and she was put to sleep. So I think we all have ladies in our life, right? We have those, and I've been really touched by all of your stories of the dogs that you were working on and just couldn't save. But for her, I realized we were successful in some of these cases. 20 out of 100 dogs we were getting out alive on Craigslist and Facebook and things, but why not her? And it wasn't because no one wanted her. It was a matter of just, we didn't have enough time, but also the marketing wasn't there. My little Facebook group and Craigslist posts, they just, she maybe needed 24 hours. So when we look at this, she was my catalyst to figure out a way to do this on a bigger scale, build a team that could do this of volunteers, and just really be as transparent as possible. I hear a lot of roadblocks around this, though. This might sound familiar of why aren't we posting our urgent list? Why aren't we marketing them? We're only sharing our adoption photos. These are real fears that we've had, including myself, but if this sounds familiar, don't want the backlash. We're gonna be viewed in a very negative light, or the community doesn't wanna see this stuff. They just wanna see volunteer happy stories, or adoption success stories, or rescue transfers. But I think there's that sweet spot, and hopefully I'm gonna get you there and some tools that you can take home. All right, so when we hear those fears, one of the things that I really focus on is the answers to those fears, so solutions. This seems really basic, but if the model that we've been running off of for the last 100 years or so has worked, of the hidden shelter and the adoption floor and the non-adoption floor, and just showing sort of the happy side of sheltering, we wouldn't be in the state we're at, where over 1 million, close to 2 million animals are not leaving our shelters alive. And really basic, but how can you get your community to step up if they don't know where you need help with, and what dogs, what cats are coming in that are so urgent? And then I think this is the big one. I think we are fearful of putting out our urgent needs or saying sort of these things of like, we need a placement by 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock because we're worried about all the complaints and the backlash that are coming in. But like, who here doesn't have a complaint in their inbox or a call every week that you've got to deal with somebody unhappy? Even in Austin, I was really surprised, but at a 98%, the complaints don't go down. I hate to tell you that, but you're not going to make everyone happy. And I, from the standpoint of actually having to answer to somebody of, well, why didn't you give me the chance to rescue this dog or cat? That's a much harder conversation to have than to say, look, these are all the things we did. Unfortunately, no rescue, no foster stepped up, but at least their face was out there. It's easier to explain that versus, well, why didn't you even tell us that, the dog only had till 5 o'clock or the cat only had till 5? I was lucky enough, as hard as it was, to be working in a situation with a 25% live release rate, 28% live release rate, but I worked on the municipal side, so every day I came in and my email was just flooded with just nasty comments, calling us killers, and you don't care, and you're heartless. And it was at a time where the community, like many of you guys have experienced, is just really upset, and they don't really know what the solution is, but they just aren't happy with the status quo. It's not acceptable in a community to be, they weren't accepting 20,000 animals dying every year. The city manager at a time heard the complaints, probably more emails and calls than any of us got at Animal Care Services, and then created an innovation team and tasked that team to make things better. And I love this quote, but essentially scour the earth for a model that works. You can imagine who raised her hand for that. Dr. Jefferson, a very brave person, that nobody really wanted to step up and take this challenge. So in coming in and bringing that Austin model in a very different city in San Antonio, it was pretty, I hear that a lot, well, that won't work in my city. It was really great to see that on a larger scale. This graph shows you that the model can work in another city, and one of the 12 ingredients is marketing your euthanasia list, scrutinizing and marketing it. The purple line there is 2011, the top graph, and that's the actual live release rate for 2011. The red line there is where they want it to be, so that's only 38%. That was the target goal for going into 2012. And then the actual live release rate in 2012 was 61%, so way exceeded it. So a 28 to 61% save rate in 1 year, that was the highest in the 60-year history. There were a lot of components to that, of course, like embracing TNR and things, but you can see on the bottom line, the real true impact wasn't so much adoptions, but it was the rescue pulls, and that was because Pets Alive model had been able to launch, and a lot of it, we didn't have a brick and mortar shelter. We were relying completely on our community to be marketing the dogs, for rescues to step up, and for fosters to step up, and adopters to come out of the woodwork because we knew they were there. Bottom line, same story. Purple line was 2011, red line was the target for rescue pulls, and the green line was actually what happened. So pretty incredible, and just sort of debunks that whole fear that like this model won't work. All right, so I think everyone here, we've been talking to you guys all weekend, and I've heard it before, of rescues and shelters just butting heads and just absolutely hating each other. I've been there, I know what you're feeling. But at the end of the day, I know it sounds corny, but it's about the dogs and cats in our care. So I've seen so many communities where they might be in a state or just down the road, their municipal shelter really needs help. They're at a 50% live release rate, but dogs and cats are getting kind of trucked in all over the country. And being a big proponent of transport, I'm definitely not against that. But I think there's some real value in just kind of getting your community situated and helping your partners. As hard as it is, we're not always going to be friends. So just some tips of what I've learned kind of on both sides, rescue and municipal, is it's local first. So reaching out, someone's got to take initiative. I've heard this a lot of like, well, they don't want to work with us, or we don't like each other. But it's important to, when you're approaching the shelter, someone take initiative. I'd love if a rescue partner could take initiative with municipal shelters, and just leave the past behind. And it's just clear communication. It's really hard when we're talking about life and death situations, when we reflect about Lady, and all of our ladies out there, in terms of the dogs and cats that we've lost. It's hard not to be emotional and to come in crying and super upset, but really you've got to come in with just one focus in mind. Leave the hysterics behind, come with data, and now you have partnerships, and you're seeing shelters in this room that are really working at a high level and making things work. Use them as your model shelter of like, if this community can do it an hour away, we can do it too. So try to lead with the data, but I think it's important to make that initial contact and take initiative. On the other side, so from the municipal side, dealing with rescue partners, I think it's pretty tough. But from being on the rescue side, it's really important to just that things are easy, that you have easy access to information, you have their photos, you've got a little bit of like personality information, so you then as a rescue can place them. So on the shelter side, think about ways that you can make it easy as possible. I've also heard a lot of pain points are like, I gave a 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. deadline, the rescue didn't pick up, or 3 p.m. deadline, rescue, came at 3:05, the dog and cat was already dead. Just go that extra mile. We know that the intake and the volume that is happening, and you need that pickup that day. I get it, you're not a boarding facility, but think about ways that you can help your rescue partner. Are they coming from far away and they got stuck in traffic, and you can put the dog or put the cat in the office for a little bit till 6 p.m. Like those little kind of things that you're doing, that push and pull, it just really helps just make the partnership just more successful, and just it's a healthier partnership. There are a lot of fears out there, so addressing those fears of like, it's not okay to blast us on social media or yell at my staff on site. These are all things that have happened. So having sort of an agreement with your rescues, a code of conduct, so to speak. If you need one, I can give it to you, just let me know. And then having just regular check-ins. So you've set a partnership up, but it's important to cultivate that, and so not just every year maybe meet, but even every month, just have monthly check-ins. How are things going? What can we do to make it easier on you as a rescue partner? And then I think just that better transparency, increased communication is gonna make a healthier partnership overall. I was really happy to say we've come a long way. This was a big move for the city of San Antonio to be able to place, they actually have a real live euthanasia list and a pre-euthanasia report that goes on their website. Anybody can pull it up. So it's really just the crazy swap, and now we're having true transparency where anyone, you guys right now, could look and see who's most at risk. So we've come a long way, and I don't think that would have happened if we didn't have those conversations. All right, we're going to give you a couple examples here of partnership in action. As you guys know, Austin is our biggest no-kill community in the country, which is wonderful, but they still have dogs and cats that are at need. So it's not a euthanasia list anymore, but more of an attention list. And this is just an example of it, just partnerships in action in work. So Austin Animal Center working with Austin Pets Alive, sharing a list like this of who medically and behaviorally they need the most help with, and just trying to get that kind of inventory down. To be able to identify who actually needs the help, and then they actually just talk. It's not super high tech, but through a Google Sheet, just updates. APA can ask questions, AAC can then give responses back and forth, and then Austin Animal Center also knows where the status is of when dogs and cats are going to be able to move over to Austin Pets Alive and what the status is. So just that open communication. You all might have a different version at home, but just with that transparency and making it as easy as possible. In San Antonio, this is just a euthanasia list generated off Chameleon, and it's just based on any dog or cat that has, well, just dogs now are on that, that are identified as past their stray hold, so they don't have an adoption or a foster or rescue hold, and then they automatically get put on this list. So that it can be over 100 animals most days. It's a little bit overwhelming. And what our role was at San Antonio Pets Alive was trying to get a real life count or know exactly who was at risk at what point. And so our solution of that with working with the shelter is doing an actual, coming with them on their daily walkthrough. So every morning at 9:30, when they're identifying how many kennel spaces they needed open, we were right there by their side, so we then could take that information and work as hard as possible to extend the deadline to at least 5 p.m. to give people more time, rescues and adopters, to step up. Because as you can imagine, with hundreds of dogs, it's really overwhelming. It's good to just have that narrow list of who's most at risk. This might look familiar, but this is just sort of the day and the schedule of how our marketing works. dog or cat comes in. This would just be an example of a stray hold in our community. It's a 72 hours. So intake day, bio picture gets on the website. Everyone can see them. They're going to be online. Day 1, day 2, we're letting adopters come forward, fosters come forward, other rescues come forward. It did us no good. It didn't work for 60 years to be competing with adopters and rescues on that same kind of like top tier group of animals coming in. So really the Pets Alive model was just focusing on that last bit, like who was left, and just being truly the safety net. So it seems sort of counterintuitive, like why aren't you starting your marketing early on? But it's because we wanted everyone else to kind of get those dogs and cats out of there that they wanted safe, and then help the ones that truly needed us. So our marketing would actually start the day before. It sounds kind of morbid. Youth Day is, they could be euthanized, or it's their release day. They can go to an adopter, but we really saw it as a youth day. The key to this, no duplication of efforts, and our marketing is going to start just right before that last little piece there to give them some extra time. Example walkthrough is, and you can imagine with 100 dogs, you're not going to be able to take everyone out of the kennel. You guys can probably relate to this. You're not going to be able to get every single one in playgroup and get a real good assessment. We don't have home notes. We're working on a really tight timeline. We're just seeing the dog in front of us for the first time. So here's just an example, a 10 a.m. deadline on a Friday. So that would be an example dog. So Thursday morning, you see that day 3, right before, we're going to get the list from the city, and we're going to print it out, and then we're actually going to walk the kennels by ourselves. And we're just trying to sponge in as much information. With over 100 dogs to get through, we know it's not perfect, but you can get actually a lot in 1 minute of just being in front of a dog's kennel. Are they a little bit shy? Are they kind of hanging back? Are they jumping up and giving you crazy kisses through the kennel? That's something. Any sort of return form, any sort of adoption owner surrender notes. We're looking at what people want so we can add that into our marketing. So if it said housebroken or I've lived with cats, we legally aren't going to say we're cat friendly or dog friendly. We're just going to give that information to our community because we know that's what people want. Like, oh wow, lived with a cat for 2 years. So we're soaking in all that information. If we're passing volunteers, we're going to ask them, have you taken this dog out? Do you know anything about him? And then we're trying to get better photos. So the intake photos, you guys know, are sometimes pretty rough because you're just trying to get through so many of them, but photos are worth gold. So we want to make sure that we're doing a lot of effort to try to at least give them a better photo. It's like a dating profile. You want to put your best photos on there. All right, so we're taking those, we've got our big list, it might be 12 pages long, and then we write our little observations on that list, and you can build a group of volunteers that could be work from home. That's really helpful. So we've got all these kind of quick notes, like this is like example notes I would write, just so it would be able, I could translate it later, but like a squishy face, floppy ears. Of course, this is not that much. Cuddler, wiggles. People like size because pictures are deceiving a lot of times. So I said, 35 pounds to give someone an idea. I would then send that information, our managers would then send that information to a group of volunteers. If you're lucky enough to have a staff member, at one point we had 2 staff people that were able to take that information and then take all my little jumbled notes and create a really good plea to post on Facebook. So this is just an example of June, all happy pictures from here on out, I promise you. So she was saved. You can tell here I don't know a lot about June. I'm like really focusing on her features, how like gentle she is. This photo shows her with a person, which is pretty cool, so you can kind of get an idea of how cuddly she is. And this was just done on an iPhone, nothing high tech or anything. We put the names on there, you can put IDs on there. I love the free app Fonto, it's Phonto, and then you can easily place any sort of words or text on there, which is really helpful. So our goal from that is creating a Facebook page, and I think we're all sort of cringing, like, oh gosh, here it goes on Facebook, but it is manageable, I promise. We learned a lot of things, just sort of the hard way, but we just created, it's a separate page from the main page, because the main page obviously has events and the adoption stories and other things that we needed. So this page just had one sole purpose, and what we were doing is filling a gap of what the city needed help with. So the city didn't have anyone that was marketing their euthanasia list. Our goal was pretty simple. We just wanted to make it easy for the community to see what we were seeing on walkthrough and translate it on an easy to share album. function. So with Facebook, with friends, networkers, adopters, we didn't spend too much time kind of policing the threads. As you guys can imagine, right now there's almost 70,000 followers on that page. It's just too much, right? So there's gonna be, I call them the barber comments, and you're gonna see those things. We had certain words that we would take down if it got into that point, and like certain pictures, but the way I felt is that was just small compared to the benefit. It was showing us it's a really hard number to kind of put your finger on of what this marketing at this level was doing for the city, but we equated it to be responsible for saving about 3,000 lives just by seeing their faces every year. We wanted to make sure that we had a few albums. You'll see here, this is just an example of Monday's Urgent Dogs. You can kind of change the date there, and then we would move them over, because people really like to know who's safe, what happened to them. We'd move them over into a safe album, and then update where they went. You know, adoption partner, and then pledges could happen on there. We were not really policing on pledges. We would put a link, though, if we had saved a dog or a cat, that we would put a link on there that people could donate. So we actually saw quite a few donations every year coming in through the pledges. Really important if you do something like this is having, again, we love our Google Sheets, but using a Google Sheet or some way to track any interest coming in, even if someone's like, hey, you know, what's the deal with, you know, Penny over there? What's her story? We wanted to track that so-and-so had emailed in, because if we get to that end of the line, I want to be able to know that somebody was interested in her and reach back out to that person. Say, hey, you know what, you know, this is the last day. Do you have a foster? Do you have a rescue? Not to put anyone on the spot, but I want to make sure that they understand, because they've expressed some interest. So that spreadsheet is tracking anything from just, hey, that dog's cute and I'm interested, all the way to like a confirmed time, a rescue, I can come tomorrow to pick up. So we're tracking all of that interest. And we also have a great way, like it's not all sad. You can see we've got the Safe album, and people are able to see literally hundreds of dogs that are being saved, and they can track back and see, you know, each month. And this isn't the perfect, you know, solution. You guys might have your own version of this, but this is what we found as the most helpful. So finished product, this is what it kind of looks like. So bad intake photo, this is Harriet here. We're taking, just with our Fonto app and an iPhone, some little decorations from the dollar store, make her, jazz her up a little bit, showing her with a person, so the person's not the focal point, but you're getting a little idea of her personality, cute little face. And then the plea is real quick and easy. Again, we don't know a ton about her, but we know that she's a wiggle butt, super cuddly. She actually loves fetch. We got her in a yard for a little bit. And then we're leaving breed out. We will, you know, let people make their own assumptions on that. We're putting age to the best of our ability, and then the weight, and then a very clear email where they can express interest. And then you see that she was adopted, so we put an update of where she went. People can celebrate, and so we're taking something that traditionally is very sad and giving people the ability to help, but then also updating the ones that are leaving alive. This is a good example of our pleas. We're very careful, so even if a dog might be fearful and kind of lip curling at us in the back, we're not going to be saying all of that on there. It's not that we're trying to deceive people. Like your marketing adoption ads, you're going with the positive only, and when someone's expressing interest, then you can have more of a frank conversation with them. We took the same approach with our urgent marketing. We also knew that our pleas had to be really, really positive, because this was their last chance. We had to give them, put them in the best light possible. So positive only marketing, super important. We didn't want to write these great long paragraphs. We didn't have the time, but also we knew that people were just flicking through Facebook, so we wanted to make sure it was concise, easy to read. And then the biggest part is having a central point of contact. When you open stuff like this up, you're going to get Facebook messages and all of this, but we just created a simple email placement app. And that's for like official tags for adoption, rescue, foster, whatever it is. You could have volunteers manning this. We would have a couple staff members manning this, but everything is funneled through there. And that way we weren't having to read Facebook messages or keep up with like comment threads. It got so good that our volunteers were actually helping us. When someone's like, I can take so-and-so on the comment thread, the volunteers would rush and be like, this is exactly what you need to do, and they would post on there. And so we had pretty much everyone trained to streamline all communication into that one email, and that made it official versus Facebook Messenger and all those comments. You can also see here we have a clear instructions and a really clear timeline. So it's important, they knew, like commitment by 9:30 and pick up by 6:30. It's not for everyone, this is really tough. We hear rescues like, I just need more time, and I totally feel that. But there are certain rescues that can, it's amazing what miracles they can make in a few hours. So it's not for everyone in terms of rescue partners being able to fit these timelines, but if you're able to, it's a good way to know who needs help. The other kind of problem we have is that you can see here 139. This was not uncommon, especially in the summers, printing out the list and seeing literally 139 just dogs, overwhelming. And so what we had to work with as a city is like, yes, we know in the morning we're gonna walk through the kennels and you're gonna identify which 20, but how can we so we're not overwhelming people and saying, save 139 dogs, we know that not 139 are going to be put down, we hope, not the next day. So how can we kind of shorten that list and truly get to who's the priority? So we worked closer with the city. It took a few more conversations of like, can we get an even more urgent list on your urgent list, sort of confusing. And so we were able to identify at least a top 10, and for our emails, like 5 or 6 dogs that truly were the most urgent. They had been there the longest, not necessarily for medical or behavior. This is an example of Gunner here. He has a broken front leg. This is just actually last week. He came through, and then so we did an email out every evening. We weren't trying to blast all of our urgents. We found most of our following actually was coming from Facebook and not through email, but we wanted to be able to point people to our Facebook page and also reach people that weren't on Facebook through email. So on this, we took our 5, 6 dogs and we got a little bit more information on them. A little heartworm test, put them in play groups, see how they were with other dogs, saw how he was out of the kennel, got a little bit more information on that broken leg. We actually had a volunteer take him, we didn't have an x-ray on site, take him to an emergency room, get the x-ray, come back, just so we can help get that placement, because I know that it's really hard to rescue a dog with so many unknowns, so we were trying to close the kind of mystery there. So that email went out, that's the night before. This is going to challenge everyone a little bit scary, right? We were trying to get the community to know literally what we were seeing. So as we're walking through the kennels and they've identified 10, 15 dogs that they were like, sorry, we can't hold them anymore. I know this is cringy, but we would literally let people know this dog has 10 more minutes. This is the dog, Gunner here, that had the broken leg that we did the last chance email on the night before. Nobody stepped up. The city then selected him like, sorry, gotta go. We would then email out, let people know, lo and behold, people come forward. So he was rescued at the very last minute, he got neutered, and then he went out. So I will say this, that there is a fine line of you don't want to hold this over people's head of like, we will euthanize this dog if you don't save them. But I think there's just that kind of that sweet spot of it's not just all adoption stories, and it's not all we will kill them if you don't step up, but there's a way to do this tactfully. And I think there's just, sharing the success stories, but also just being transparent. You'll notice we've also put the city email on there, our email. We're not the ones making these life and death decisions as a rescue group, but we want people to actually know real time what's happening. May or may not work for you, but I would just challenge you. This is like the epitome of transparency. All right, also too, one of the things, you guys might already be doing this, but it's something that's really like bringing back to basics. The old Rolodex idea is just creating a spreadsheet. So this is not a real rescue, don't reach out to them, but there's a rescue, say in Wisconsin, that has a specialty in large breed dogs. As rescues out there, you guys know you've got your specialties and what you do well. When we're marketing, we want to know those specialties and how you like to be communicated with. Is it text? Is it email? Do you want videos and photos? How many dogs or how many cats that you can take in at a time? So it's helpful to have sort of a cheat sheet around this, so you're able to then reach out and say, the incontinent bulldog that came in, I don't need to find necessarily a foster, but I've got a breed-specific rescue that really focuses on medical things, or a pug that came in, or different things, or even just a really sweet, mixed breed dog that that a rescue might have space for, and then you can reach out to them. You can do the same thing with your fosters. If you've got, like yesterday I used an example of a foster that was really good with our little sassy small dogs. We want her name on there to let, we have capacity out there, so we're proactively reaching out. So there is an element of just, marketing all your needs, but also just being smart about being proactive and reaching out to groups that you're like, ooh, I know so-and-so is gonna want this. A couple other examples. Again, it's that I'm hopefully getting to that middle ground where we're not saying we will kill this dog or cat if you do not pick up. But this is from Palm Valley. Traditionally has been, or historically has been one of the worst shelters in our country in terms of getting dogs and cats out alive for being they're under-resourced and just having it in huge volume. But they just hit 90% for 1 month, and their hope is to continue that throughout the year. But this is a pretty good example. They didn't say euthanize, we kill, but they did give a very clear deadline, and they were very transparent about what resources they had. And then they're updating their community of, guess what, he found a rescue, little puppy. How many of these have come through our shelters and they have just literally been euthanized because we haven't been able to figure out a way to make this transparent without all the blowback. So look at shelters that are doing this really well. The idea too is giving our community a better understanding of our everyday, so being super transparent. I'm absolutely in love with this report card that Dallas puts out. It's daily. You can pull it up today and you see exactly where they are. I love that kind of green, yellow, red. It makes us, if we're not in the animal world, to kind of really identify and understand what being full means. It's like, okay, code red, I get it. You can see how many dogs and cats came in. You can see where their outcomes are. So if you see both of these lines in the red, you know, in a few months from now when we hit spring or summer, you know that Dallas needs help. So this is beautiful. Transparency, it saves lives. Another really great example from Austin Animal Center on their Facebook page, doing daily space counts. This is how many animals have come in. This is how many went out. So you can see 52 came in one day, but only 50 left. So you can pretty much guess they're full. They're even talking about how many animals are in their foster home, and they used this as an opportunity to feature one of their cat's tails that's up for adoption. So a way to kind of get urgency. No, they're not saying we're going to euthanize this pet or, you know, we're at this case, but how do you convey urgency to your community tactfully and get people to really understand and step up? And then understanding too that social media is a balance. It's really hard for us to visit shelters that are in that 25-28% live release rate. I want to hurry up and find like who needs my help and where can I, you know, start networking with rescues. But I go on their Facebook page or I go on their website and it's literally just all happy stories. And I love seeing that. And I'm not saying go home and like show all the sadness, but looking at the balance. So this is a great example from Pima Animal Care Center of their medical wards. So remembering that we're pleading out, you know, dogs and cats that might have something wrong with them. They might be in your clinic. And so they're letting everyone know, guess what, we are completely full. And then they're also showing an email of where people can go and help. So it's all about a balance, not just for adoption photos. And I just want to close with a few success stories and just kind of reminders for us. You might all know this, but don't assume what people want. This is Sparky. He came in a couple years ago into San Antonio. He wouldn't let me touch him for a really long time. He was growling, snapping. The only good thing, I guess, that was sort of easy is he got along really well with other dogs. We kept him around 3 months. We had no space. We were just getting really creative. He was living in a doggy daycare at one point, moving. We couldn't get him into foster. No one really wanted to take on Sparky. And he almost bit me a few times, but there is someone for everyone. So Flo came forward. We did not do landlord checks. We weren't doing vet checks. Sparky looked like, on the picture, it looked like one of her dogs that she had just lost, and turns out she was in a little bit of a state of depression because she was still mourning the loss of her last dog. She is a truck driver by trade, so she travels across the country in an 18-wheeler. She's super lonely, and I also didn't even think about this of the security part of that job of being alone, a woman at a truck stop every night just by herself, and so she wanted a companion. She went out to visit Sparky literally for about 3 weeks, was taking him to Home Depot and gradually getting him just to come around, and it's incredible. Their adoption story is amazing. He'll probably never be a dog that you can just like hug and cuddle with, but he definitely cuddles with her, and he's come such a long way, and it's perfect for a dog that's super fearful to have that constant just companionship next to her, and travels across the country. And he actually just helped win San Antonio $25,000 Holiday Wishes grant through Petco Foundation. So pretty amazing. That wouldn't have been around if we didn't market. And you might have seen her before. She's literally one of my favorite dogs in the world. This is Honey. She came in. She had puppies. They were all about 8 weeks, so they were able to get spayed and neutered and off to adoption, which left Mama behind, a story that we know all too well, right? She had Demodex mange, mom bod, as I just learned this weekend. She didn't look great. She was very stressed, very fearful in her kennel. We marketed her on the Euthanasia List. A partner came forward from Oregon, adopted her, and then she went up north, and we keep getting these adoption photos. It's just incredible. And Honey would have been, you know, just like in Lady's Time in 2010, she would have been a dog that no one would have given her a chance. And just through marketing and getting that word out and giving that urgent timeline, we gave her this opportunity at a new life. So here is my email. We might have a couple questions. If you guys need anything at all, let me know. Shoot me an email. I'm happy to share. But I have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. If not, oh cool. I quieted the room. Yay!